we're going to look at how we can create our customized dashboard. This dashboard is actually meant for only the admin, not the user, only the admin. So after successful authentication by creating an account and logging in, the admin needs to access a dashboard, which I'm going to have three buttons beside, and you're going to have the meeting details with the meeting ID and the passcode. So let's check the diagram that we created earlier on, so we can look at that and now build our UI for the dashboard. So you can see from the diagram here, we have in the home button, which takes in the meeting details. We have a shared meeting, which is going to be a pop-up with a Netcode-Hub modal, which is going to pop up on the screen for the admin to create meeting by specifying the meeting details. And aside from that, we're going to have a logout, whereby we have already created a component that we're going to navigate to when the user clicks on logout. And when you check our code here, the logout falls within the admin folder because it's only admin who can log out. So you can see from here, with authentication, I have the logout page here. It is not for the user or the attendee. Okay, so the dashboard is going to come from here after authentication. Then we can go ahead and create our dashboard. So before we create the dashboard component, we need to add the layout, because you know that we have created this admin landing layout already, but we are not using this layout. Now this layout is going to be used by the login and now the register component or the pages. So from here, we want to set this as a default layout as soon as the page or the app loads for an admin. So from here, we can get access to it from app.razor. Now with app.razor, it is using main layout. So you want to change that to admin landing layout. So when we create a component or a page and we do not specify the layout, default is going to use this admin landing layout. Okay, so it means that when you check this authentication landing page, we haven't specified any layout here. Register, we haven't specified any layout here. So both of these are going to use a default layout. Take note. Okay, so now let's go ahead and build our dashboard. Again, when you check our dashboard, we're having our buttons here, which are navigations. We have our home, schedule meeting, and then we have a logout. So we need to actually have an app bar which will give us access to this. Okay, so let's do that. So with this navbar, we can go ahead and use the same Fluent app bar. Now, when you check the header component, we use this app bar here, which is a Fluent app bar. So we specified our register and our login. We can copy the same thing and I'll change it to the tabs that we need, which is the home, schedule meeting, and our log out. So I have this already. We can go ahead and have it here. We need to have an icon, so we store that so we can use it in the Fluent app bar, wherever icon is necessary. We need to include the namespace from this, which is coming from this Microsoft Fluent UI ASP.NET Core component. And in that, we are specifying the orientation as vertical. So you want to have it in the vertical form. That is the height. You want to have a small icon as a class, and that we want to have this background as primary subtitle. In that, we have the first app bar, which is the home icon, because when you check here, we having our home, we need schedule meeting and our logout, and that's exactly what we're having. So 3 of them: home, schedule meeting, and then we have this logout. So in that, we need to create the method to return the icon specified here. And in that, I have this method created, which returns an icon by switching from field to regular. So as we did in the app bar, this is going to return a field icon and a regular when this button is active or not. It's going to switch that. So we have this home icon. This is the meeting icon. That is to schedule meeting. Then we have this logout icon to log out. Okay. And then this icon for this, we do not need this because we have only 3, and this is enough. Now, when this button is clicked, we want to do something. When you check this is navigating to the dashboard. We are specifying this href, but with this should be an on click, because here when you check this UI, we want to click on this. Now this is having a link, but with this other meeting, as soon as this is clicked, we want to pop up a modal. Now this modal gives us access to this title, start date, end date, and stuff. So instead of creating a page to navigate this, no, we do not want to create a page. We rather want to use a modal for it. So in that, we need to create a state which is going to, as soon as this clicks, this current page can be notified and then pop up this. This is found in another page. Take note on that. Now with this, so when you check here, let me minimize this. We are having this button here, and when this button is clicked, let's say we are in the dashboard. So in the dashboard, when we click on this button here, we want to make sure we pop up this modal. Okay, and so that's what we need to do. So we specified this here, that is our app bar item. So now that we have this, for us to achieve this well, I think we need to, this app bar that we have should not be in the dashboard page, right? So we need to move this to a component. So I think the best thing to do here is to cut this. Now within this, I think within here, we can create a folder for organization purpose. And let's say this is dashboard. And let's move this here. So all components related to dashboard is going to be here. And then let's create this app bar component here so we can reference it here. So that is an app bar component. And now with this app bar component, we paste it here. So you can see that the issue that I was talking about, we're having 2 components. Now this app bar, we're going to make reference of it with a layout. So in order for us to handle that, we first need to create the layout first, and then specify this app bar in the layout. So let's create our layout, and this is the third layout that we're going to, or second layout that we're going to create. We have an admin landing layout. Then we're going to have our dashboard layout. So this layout is specifically created for the dashboard. So in that, we're going to inherit from this layout component base, and in that, we're using this Fluent stack. Now with this stack, we are specifying this app bar that we created, and then we are going to add this body. So you can see this is a stack, and it's going to orient this horizontally, right? So you're going to have the first bar here, that's an app bar beside, and then the body here. Good. So now that we have this, we having these 2 components. Now in this app bar, that's where we have the button. When we click on this, we want to get this dashboard page notified and then pop up this dialog or the modal that we're going to reference here. So that's the reason why I said we need state to manage that. So in that, we're going to look at how we can work with that. Now within this app bar, we are having this scheduled meeting. Now with this scheduled meeting, what are we doing here? We're going to inject a state And now after the injection, we are going to click a button that we're going to specify in there, which actually is going to be a method that we're going to create. So let's inject it. We can use @inject, or we can use this to inject it. We're going to create nav state. Now with this nav state that we're going to create, we are going to expose a method. Now with this method that we're going to expose, we're going to give it a name as click button. We're doing that so that we can notify the dashboard page as soon as this button is clicked. This dashboard page is going to subscribe to this nav state, and it's going to get notified, and then set the show modal to true and now display the modal. So we're creating this state here, which is yet to be created, and then we're going to specify a public function known as click button. Okay, and that's what we are calling it over here. Now that we have this created, let's go and create this state. So within that, I think it is good that I create a folder here and I name it as states, because we're going to be creating authentication states too. So not only this, so that we can put all our states in. Now within that, let's go and create our class, which is the nav state. Now within this nav state, we are going to have a few, let's say just a class of nav state. Let's have a public property, which is a boolean, and we're going to say clicked. So if method is clicked, we want to say get is public, but set is going to be private, right? Because we can set it only within this method. We don't want to set this outside here. Then we want to set a default value to false. So when you call this, when the app loads, the value here is going to be false. Now let's have an action which a page can subscribe to it. Let's make it as nullable, and let's say this is button action. You can give it any name of your choice, but that is a button action. And in that, we want to expose a method that we called. So you see we are consuming this method here, so we are yet to expose this. So click button, we're saying that void, but this should be public. So public void and then click button. And with this click button, as soon as I do that, this is what I want to do. I want to set this as click to true, and then I want to invoke this, making sure it's not before we invoke it, we're checking it. So we invoke that. Now, after we are done with this, we are going to register this in the program. So register that as scope. Then once we have this registered, we can go ahead and now inject it. So where we have this app bar, we have this nav state. So we can go ahead and now include the namespace here, and now we have this solved. Okay. Now how, when this button is clicked, it's being invoked. How do we subscribe to this button and now get a page notified to render the model that we're going to be issuing? Let's see from the dashboard, not the layout, rather the dashboard page that we have. We need to first implement iDisposable. This gives us access to the dispose method. Now with the dispose, since we have this, let's also inject our navigation state. So we can inject it here. And then from this, we're going to say that this navigation state has a method, an action known as this button. Now with this button, we're going to unsubscribe. And now this unsubscribe from state has changed. So when the page loads up, we want to go ahead and unsubscribe. So right here, instead of we just refreshing the page, we don't want to do that. We rather want to call a method instead of just refreshing the page. So maybe we're going to create a method known as shadow meeting button click. So we don't want to say button click. We want to say that shadow meeting. So this is going to be a method that we're going to create here. Now let's grab this, and on top here, we're going to say that void shadow meeting. Now, when this is clicked, we want to open the modal. Now, this modal is going to be a Netcode-Hub modal that we're going to create. Okay, so it means we're going to also create this method, which should come here, which also same void and then open modal. Now, with this open modal, maybe we can, let's try and fix this first. We're going to say that maybe it's meeting modal open, set this to true. So this is going to open the modal. That means we're going to create a Boolean property here. And now the default state is going to be false. Okay, so now that we have this, we need to inject, or we need to add our modal over here. But since we are unsubscribing it from the page disposing, it means as soon as the page initializes, we need to subscribe it so that when the button is clicked, we can notify this. And let's use the initialize page cycle method to do it. So once you have this, you can just grab this from here. Then instead of minus, we're going to plus it. So we're going to subscribe to it. Okay. This should be an async. And then for message display, let's say a modal message displaying stick, we need to create another variable which is going to handle the response in case user tries to create meeting and error happens or there's a response from the service. You want to display that to the user. Okay. And also we want to be having the recent status, because you know that here after the meeting has been executed, they want to change the state to a recent meeting. So in that, we're also going to be having another a message that we're going to pass on in case we get call a service to get a recent meeting and it could not get any. We want to set this to default, maybe no recent meeting found, or maybe this and that, and then we can also pass it on. The same thing applies to if the user tries to get the current meeting being scheduled. We can also return in case there's none. We can specify the status from this meeting. And then, we need to authenticate the user. So definitely we're going to be having this cascading auth state. That is what we can use to check if user is authenticated or not. We need this authentication state, which is coming from this component.authorization. Okay. So once you have that, we cannot go without our show loader. We need its match. So we have our show loader over here. And then we're going to create an instance of our meeting model. What is this meeting model? That is what we're going to be using to create a meeting. Check here from our diagram. We having this meeting detailed. There's a detail over here. That's the title, start date, end date, and description. That's the detailed. And in that, these all must be specified from the user. Now the system is going to generate the ID and now the link and now the passcode. Okay, but with this, it is a model that the user needs to provide in order to generate this. So we need to provide a model which is going to handle that. So let's go ahead and undo it. Now, when I was going through the Fluent documentation and looking at how we can get access to the date and time, I got one. And in that, we needed to create a model, a specific model to handle that. So I created this private model that we're going to be using. Let me put that here. I think this push should be at the bottom. So I have this, and actually this is a private one. So if I decide not to put a private, it's going to be private. So we have that, and we need to provide the title, the description, the start date, start time, end date, and end time. All these are having what? The date time property, but don't worry, we're going to have access to it. Just having a date time, I think the type, that's the correct one, the type. So we're going to extract the time from this. We're going to extract the date also from it. But this is what we need we need to use in order for us to have access to this fluent time picker or the date picker. Okay. So with this, we have this meeting model created, and we need to create an instance of this meeting model so we can use that in our edit form. So here we're going to create an instance of this meeting model, which is meeting, and we're going to be using this meeting object in the edit form. Okay, good. So we are also going to call two services. The first service is going to return the meeting schedule, the current meeting. The second service is going to also return the recent meetings. So in here, we having the property as get meetings and the same get meeting, because with this get meeting, we can store it as meetings and also the recent meeting. Why am I saying that? When we get to this get meeting, we're going to introduce a property which is going to be a boolean. So to check whether this meeting has been completed or not. If it's completed, it's going to be a recent. If it isn't, then it's going to be what? Meeting. So with the same T type, we can get access to the two states over here. Okay. Then we're going to be storing this host ID as well. Now this host ID is very important because that's what you're going to be using to check and also call start meeting. When you click on meeting, we must provide the meeting ID and then the host ID so that we can call an API to get token, which is from the Twilio. And now through the Twilio, that's where we can use to start the meeting, start our camera, and also start the audio. So you want to hold the host ID or the admin ID over here. Okay, so we're storing that here. So after we're doing that, when the page loads here, we're going to be checking if the user is authenticated, because admin cannot bump into this page while this person is not authenticated. So after we subscribe to this, the second thing to do here is to check whether this user is authenticated, or even we can go ahead and now check before we subscribe. Okay, that's the first thing to do. So check for authentication. I think we can put it here. So after it has been checked and it passes, it's going to skip this, because if you are not, we are negating it. So in case you're not authenticated, that's why we want to kick you out. But in case you're authenticated, then it's going to hop to the next one. And then you want to show the loader. So show loader here. Let's set this to true. So show loader. And we're going to delay for 500 milliseconds. And all these are happening between the initialize method. Why are we doing that? Because we're going to be getting the meeting and the recent meeting from the service. So whilst you're doing that, you want to delay and now show this on top. And now make sure we do what we're supposed to do. So from here, we are getting this host ID. We can get host ID from the claims, because we're going to be adding the user ID. When you create the user from our API, you're going to be adding the user ID as a claim, okay, to the token that you're going to send to the user, this client. So as soon as the user is authenticated, definitely we're going to have a claim as an ID. So we can store this ID over here as a host ID, which has been specified globally here. And then we can get access to the claim types, which is whereby we need to use the system.security.claims namespace, and then we can extract the name identifier. We want to grab the value, not the key. So we grab the value here and now store it as string. Okay, so when it gets to this line, it means that here we have the user here, get user ID. And after that, we want to check in case this is null. Maybe there might be an issue whereby user is created. and the host ID or ID is not part. In case this works and it is null, we want to return, but sure, it's not going to do that, okay? But well, we want to make sure we instead to check and then do the needful when actually it happens. Then in case everything work here, we're going to get meetings. This meetings here is going to be the current meetings that are yet to be initiated. And then we're also going to get recent meetings. That's the meetings which have been completed. So we get two methods here. The reason why I am splitting this is I could have added the two servers in one method. But you know, when we add meeting, when we create meeting, we need to get meeting so we can have the current meeting or the just meeting added to the list so we can display to the user. Okay. But for the recent meeting, as soon as the page or the user loads the page once and we get it, we don't want to be calling the API again anytime that we add meeting, unless we complete a meeting or we close meeting before we can call this to update it. So in that, we do it, and we have already subscribed to the scheduled meeting already. And at the end of the day, we're going to show the loader as false. After we are done with this, just go and false the loader. So just going to get this loader hidden. Okay. So by then, we're going to have this method executed. This method is also going to be executed. Okay. Now let's see how we can work with the get meeting. So the first meeting, that is this get meeting over here, we need to create a method to handle that. Now I'm having a simple method which is going to assist us in getting meetings. So check it out. We need a meeting response. Now with this meeting response, we're going to store it as an object of meeting response. We're calling the meeting service. Now this service is going to get meeting. Now with this meeting, it takes in the host ID. Why am I doing that? Because you know that this app that we are creating, many users can just bump into it and schedule meeting to meet their people, their attendees, right? So if you want to get meeting by the host ID, so as soon as you connect to the app, you must provide your ID. That is a unique key that we can do it and return all the associated meetings with it, and I return to you, the user. Okay, so you need to provide this. This is very important. Rechecking is going to return a response of success and also the data. In case it is success, we want to assign this meeting, which is going to come out with enumerable of this get meeting of data. I want to assign it over here. But in case it isn't, that is where the meeting status work. Because here, since we are using a custom response type, we can specify the data and also an extra message. And we want to extract the message and then pass it on, so that the display message is going to be dynamic. We can update it anytime that you want to do it. Okay, so we are specifying that over here. That's get meeting. Now, what of the get recent meeting? This is quite also simple. From the down here, we are doing something similar to this, and we are also calling the same meeting service. And now with this meeting service, what are we doing? We still pass on the host ID because it is the same. Our system may have a lot of recent meetings, but in order for you to query yours and get yours, you need to provide your host ID so we can get what it belongs to you. And in case it is success, you see we are doing the same thing. In case it isn't, then with the recent meeting status, you want to pass on the message over here so we can display that to the user. Okay, so that is what we are doing for this recent and I get meeting. So we have solved this error from the initialize method. Now, after we're done with this, you know definitely that when we display message, because you're going to have a message to be displayed. When we display message, we are going to show or close it. So what we have created in the earlier on in the login and register, I just copied and now I'm going to paste it here. We're going to create a modal message open. So we need to create a Boolean property to handle that. And the default one is false because when the page renders, we don't want to pop up that modal whilst we have no message to be displayed. Okay, so we need to make sure we have that set to false. And then, you know, when we're going to have our modal popped up, whereby it's going to allow user to provide all the necessary information that we need in order to create meeting. When a button is clicked, what are we going to do? We're going to create a meeting request. Now, this meeting request is going to be in the shared library, or the shared library that we have created over here, because this is going to be shared by the client and also the server. So let's go and do that. So now we are done with authentication here. We can go ahead and I'll add another folder and name it as meeting. Now with this meeting, we can go ahead and create our response and now the request as we did in the authentication. So in the earlier on, I explained the reason why we're creating requests and our response folders, or even the model. So I think you are through now. It's good. Okay, so let's go ahead and then we're going to first tackle on with our request. With our request, we need create meeting request. So let's first create that. Now this create meeting request, we want to store everything as string except the ID. You know, with the request, we are not going to provide an ID because this is just a DTO. And in here, user does not need to provide an ID for this. The system will do that automatically. So all that we need here is the host ID, the title, description, the start time only, and we have the end time, start date, and end date. So you can decide to modify these models that we have here. You decide to choose only time or only date. It's up to you. But while you want to have a date, a start date, you want to have an end date, you want to have a start time and an end time. So we have all these implemented nicely here. Okay, so that's our create meeting request. Now we're going to get our meeting. Now this get meeting, it is a request. Why is it a request? Because we're going to make a command to the, let's say, the API, and I'll get it. So I think this should come from a request, a response. We can put it in the request or the response. But as soon as it is get, it should be a response, right? But we are passing on a parameter in it, which is the host ID. So maybe we can decide to put it in the request. So I'm going to say this is get meetings request. Now this get meetings request, it should be a record of with a parameter of host ID, because you need to provide a host ID to get necessary meetings that you want. And also we want to have this get recent meeting, the same thing with the host ID. So can just make a copy of this. Then I'm going to say that get recent meeting. Let me put this in a different type. Okay, so I have all these requests. Now within that, we're going to be having a clear meeting request. So clear meeting, this will be fired or this will be sent as soon as the user closes the meeting. But I think with this, we're going to handle that in the advanced one. So for the basic flow, we want to limit ourselves to create and now get meetings and also the recent meetings. Okay. So now that we have this, we're going to work on one thing again, which is attach details to connection ID. Because when you check with this, let me put on a diagram. Check here. You know, when a user creates the meeting over here after it's created, and the user initializes the meeting, the user image is over here. For a user or attendee to join, it needs to provide display name and the auto ID generated, right? Now this should pass on here, and now before the user can be, this user can be added to the chat or to the conference. When you check over here, before we generate or we talk to an external communication with the Twilio, we need this meeting ID and now name, right? And now this is what the API will send to the Twilio to request access token for this attendee to join the meeting. So within here, we want to attach the details to the connection ID, which is anybody who is connected to this service. We want to attach the person's connection ID and also the name to the system. We're going to map that, and by doing so, we need to add another record, which is going to be a request for that. So maybe let's grab this. Then let's make a duplicate of this. I can change this here. And then within that, we need a connection ID and the user ID. And also we need a string name. Now this name for an admin, we don't need to provide this. But for user, we need to provide name because the user is going to provide name from here. User needs to provide a name. So we can catch the name here, get the ID, and I'll specify the meeting ID, and then we can make a request to that. Okay, so with this, let's also move this to its type. Okay, so that's what we need for our request. Now let's go and handle our response. Now from this response, we want to have create meeting response. Now this create meeting response is going to inherit the service response that we created. And since we are not specifying any T type, we can specify the type there as string, so that we can provide the requirement that this service needs. So service response, and then it takes in string over here, and that is all. So this should be a record. Okay, so that is what we need for this create meeting response. And here we also going to have access to get meeting. Now this get meeting, that is what get recent meeting and our get meeting itself is going to use. The other responses are going to use. So this is going to be a shared, and within this we want to have all these properties. It should be a public. So starting from the meeting ID, we have the passcode, the host ID, the title, description, start time, end time, start date, end date, and now the meeting link, so that the admin can copy this link and now send it to the attendee to join through this link. Okay, so once you have this, we can go ahead and now create our get our meeting response. So this get meeting response, we need to go ahead and in the meeting, we're going to create class. Then we're going to say this is get meeting response. Now this get meeting response, it should be a record. So let me just clear this. And now this record, this is going to inherit from this service response. Now this service response is taking in our enumerable of this get meeting that we just created as a type. That is all. So that is what this needs. Okay, from our end, we need to provide get meeting, which should be enumerable because you want to get meeting a list. So meeting host a meeting by the host ID, which is going to be a list. And also for this get recent meeting response, it's going to be the same thing, but just that the name differs. So we have get recent meeting response, and then we need to provide the host ID too, which is going to return a list of these. Okay. As soon as we also attach the user details, the connection ID, we also going to have a response. So in that we're going to create a response for each. That's attach details, the connection ID response. Now this should also just be a record, and it should have a T type of string. Since we are not going to provide value to that, we want to make sure it is just string. or any T type like GUID or etc. We can specify that in there. Okay. Now, once you have this, we also need one response, which we're going to be using in order for us to communicate or join the video, which is the Twilio service response. Now, this is a custom response, but it's going to use our abstract response type that we created. So in here with this Twilio service response, we can also create another class of it. That is Twilio service response. Now, this also takes in, it's a record, which takes in a string as a T type in that. Okay, so we are good with our service. Now you can see that all of these are inheriting from this abstract service response, right? Good. So all of these are inheriting from it. So this is a type that we're making sure all of these are inheriting from. Okay, so now that we are done with this in our next, we're going to take a break. In our next video, we're going to look at continuing the dashboard, and also with these services that and responses that we have created, how can we integrate them in the dashboard to make service call and also to get them. Welcome back again to the video. Now we have created our models, which is our requests and our responses for this meeting. And in this, we're going to look at how we can use these responses in our dashboard page so we can call, meeting, and do all stuff with it. So in our dashboard component that we created, that is the page itself, we are having this get meeting whereby we have now created the model for it, right? So we need to go and add a reference, the namespace from the shared library, and also we need to create a meeting service which is yet to be created, but for our get meeting response we do have it here, and then we can go ahead and check it out. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is, if I click on the edit form we're going to create, we're going to have on valid submit, we're going to call a submit meeting or to create meeting. Now if that works, if I click on that, let's say the user have or the admin has provided all the necessary information that the app needs in order to create the meeting. When that button is clicked, what is the next thing that's going to be done? And that is where we're going to talk about. Now from here, we having this submit meeting. It's an event that we are creating. We're going to call that in an edit form. And now in here, you can see that we created a modal open. So there is a meeting modal specifically for the meeting. Now you want to make sure it is true. No, it is false, because here, as soon as I click on this, it means I've provided all the information that I need on that model. And as soon as I click on this, I want to hide that, meaning we're going to start the processing and I'm going to show load that to true. I wait for 500 milliseconds. We're going to have a create response, and our this create meeting response, it should come from the shared library. Let's see, maybe we made mistake in creating create meeting request. Okay, that's a create meeting request, and in our request we have create meeting request. This is it, right? Create meeting request. So we need to make sure we have that reference here. Maybe we should add a reference. So here we are looking at the meeting responses, and we can look at the meeting request. Okay, and we should have this create meeting request. Here we have it over here. And now this create meeting request, I think is saying something. Okay, create meeting request. This should be public. So from this, we want to set a description, the title, and the host ID. The host ID, we get it as soon as the page initializes. So we're going to have it here. We're going to extract our date only, time only, and a start date only, and the start time only. we're using the type of date only and our time only to get the time and the date. And after that, in our meeting service, we're going to have a create meeting service to be called, and we pass on the model in here. Okay, now the response that you have, we're going to pass on to this model message, which is going to be a response. And then in case it is true, we want to clear the container, the meeting container, and also the instance that we created for this meeting model. We want to clear that. And then we want to get meeting again, because by then a new meeting has been added. So you want to call the API or the service so it can return a list included the new one that we just created. And after that, you want to show the loader, you want to hide it, and then we want to show this message open. So this is message model open, which is going to set to true. It means that here, in case this is true, you want to call this again, and then you want to show the message, maybe meeting created, okay? And then we want to notify the page to just force all this page to render and to display the model that we have created, okay? We can also add additional two methods to handle this. Maybe a cancel and a reset meeting form. So maybe when cancel is clicked on, then we have this meeting model open. You want to set this to false. That means hide that. Or in case I click on reset meeting, then the meeting instance that we have over here, that is what the form is going to use. We want to clear that to reset this meeting. Okay, now with this is meeting model open, you know that if I click on open model, that is over here, open model, where is it? Open model. I'm going to set this to true so I can show the model. And now the last part that we're going to do here is, when we have a list of meeting, which is the current meeting or meeting to be executed, user can choose a specific meeting and then start it, right? So when the user starts this, what are we going to do? We want to create another component, which is going to be a meeting component or meeting page. We're going to navigate to that page and then pass on the current meeting ID, the current meeting ID. And in that, we can go ahead and now start the meeting. So we need another component. But within that, we need to create a method which will be called as soon as a start meeting is clicked. So in that, down here, I can have that method displayed, which is going to be start meeting over here. So if I click on start meeting, I need to provide the meeting ID. And in that, I want to show the loader. Then I want to delay for 500 milliseconds. Then I want to navigate to this page. And here we're going to hold that as a parameter from this meeting component or meeting page. Okay, we pass on the meeting ID to that page. Okay. Once we're done with our code, that is where we're going to work with our UI. Okay, so all that we're going to be doing here is to include a service, and then that is all. So we're going to handle the UI here. So for the UI, we first need to include our loader and specify the parameter, which is showed loader. We have it already created, so we're going to include a namespace over here. And aside from that, we're going to have in our message model, and our message model going to be on top, which is going to display a message as soon as we click on show that. So it's message, it's model message open. We have it over here, and we should include the model namespace here too, and that's going to be notification passing a message, and then we have an okay. When this is clicked, you want to force or set this to false and now state change that. Okay, now let's go and look at how we can work with the model for this meeting, create meeting. So I'm going to also put this here. So you can see from here that I am having a duplicate of this Netcode-Hub model 3 times, right? And so I can show each and every one. Okay, So that's a good thing about my package here. That's a Netcode-Hub model. You can just copy and paste it 3 times, multiple times, assign a different variable to each, and you can still go ahead and show each of them. Okay, so here with what we have, we're going to be having not is open. We say that is meeting modal open, so we can know that this is about meeting. We are going to specify it here. And then when you look at the content template, we're having an edit form whereby we specify the object as meeting. We're going to be using this Fluent component. So let's make sure we include the namespace of Fluent text field. We specify the title over here from this meeting. And then we specified all these, the max line, the label, the text field as text. And also you want to have an auto focus through. Aside from that, we want to go ahead and set this. Let's see the reason why it is saying. Okay, so let's move on now. Okay, let's go on and we get there. So from here, we need to specify the date and time. And now we're using a div v stack, vertical stack. It's going to arrange this vertically. And that we're having a date and time, and then we having the start date. So this is the start. Specify the date. We're using Fluent date picker for the date, and then time picker for the time. And here we're having the end date. So once you're having this end, then we're having the date and now the time. So that's the Fluent picker for date and time. And then the next thing that we're going to be doing here is the Fluent text area, because we need to provide meeting description. We want to make sure the width is 400 pixels and we can resize it vertically. You want to set the placeholder, and also you want to create a space between the bottom of 2 using this bootstrap class. Okay, then we're going to have this button. There's just a bootstrap button that we're using, or the button element that we're using with the bootstrap classes, btn, btn primary, and with the type here, it is submit. In here, we are using the Fluent icon. We want to add icon to the button. And in that, we need to specify the icon size and also the color of the icon. But with this, we need to include this. But when you do this, you're going to have an issue with that. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to say that using icon, then we're going to assign that here. And instead of this, we're going to remove this after this so that we can use that here as an icon. Then with the, I think, let's see, we did that in the login and register pages. So we can go there and I'll make sure we're doing the right thing. You know, that is the issue with Fluent UI components. Okay, so icons, we need to have this. And I think if we've done that, right? So there's this one. You have this icon, and that's what we have here. So that's the issue is now gone. So using icons, we assign these icons to it. Okay, and the next thing that we're going to be doing here is we have this buttons. We have of submit type, and that is a create meeting. We have our reset type, and our which type here is a button. If I click on this, you want to clear the object. Then we have a type here, that's a cancel meeting. If I click on that, I want to go ahead and I'll cancel the meeting and hide the form. And these are the icons that I am displaying or adding to each respectively. Okay, so that's our modal end for that. So that's what we need to do in order to have our the modal working. Okay, so all these, it is only this property which is driving this out. Is meeting modal open. When it's set to true, it's going to be shown. If it is false, it's going to be hidden. Good. So now that we have our modal to create meeting, we also need a place where we can display our current meeting and now the recent meeting. So with our current meeting, we can just have our meeting set up here. I have added label to indicate where the meeting starts and where it ends. let's go through. Now with our current meeting that we have, we are having a div container with a column LG12 for a bootstrap class, and we want to create space between the bottom. And in that, we are doing all this. So we are using a Fluent card. And on this card, we are having a Fluent card as a class, which we're going to add to at the bottom. We're going to use a label, and then we're having this icon here. Now we're saying this is an upcoming meeting. Okay, that's for the label. Now we're checking if the meeting count is greater than 0, meaning we have meetings in it. If so, then go ahead and loop through it. So we can see we are looping through the meetings, and now with individual meeting, we want to add the title, we want to add the ID, the password, the date and time. So you can see from date and time, we are using a list where we specified the group item, and now within that we are adding this little bit CSS class and also specifying the start date alongside with the start time, the end date alongside with the end time. Okay, so we are doing that in there. And then when you check here, we having a list with, and this the same thing, a line whereby we specify our link. So this is the link, the meeting link, which will be generated automatically by the API, and then we can display that through this. We have our meeting description over here, and then we having the button which tells you that, hey, you can start meeting when you click on this button. Now when you click on this button, we are calling a method and then pass on this meeting ID. That is what we created. Okay, but in case meeting is null, if here we're saying that if it's greater than 0, that is why we want to do this. But if in case it isn't, then we want to display meeting status, because this meeting status here is what we're going to set up from here, get meeting. Check it out. Now from get meeting, we want to set a meeting status. In case the success or the response here it is false, we want to set the message from the API and then display in the UI. Okay, so that is our current meeting. Now when we go to our recent meeting, we can leave a space down here and then also add a recent meeting in there. Now the current meeting and then the recent meeting, all of this should be in a div container. But when you look at this, there is a current meeting. So current meeting is in the column LG12, and that is it. So we should have a container which is going to house all these at once. So I'm going to say that, hey, create a div container with this a class. So that is a style. I want to have a style of this, and then I want to close it with same two divs. Okay, so we having this style, and then we want to have the row of what, margin of 3, and then we have a current meeting in here. Okay, so within the same row, we're going to be having a column, another column LG12, because a row takes in column 12. So we have this for the first row. Now for the second row, we can also put in our recent meeting in here. And our recent meeting is the same thing as the current meeting, just that here instead of using this meeting, we are using this recent meeting, and that is all. And also when you go ahead and check from this, you can see it is the same thing that we're doing over here, just that this does not have start meeting because this has already been executed, so we don't need to add a start meeting again. Okay, then we have the meeting description, and that is all. But in case this is null from the service, then we want to return recent meeting status. And we're also doing the same thing from here. So when you check this get recent meeting, in case it's null, we want to set the message from the message that we're going to set in the API. Okay, so by doing so, we can manage our dashboard well, and now have access to a meeting, a recent meeting, and also create meeting as well. And finally, we can have a button that we can start a specific meeting. But there is one thing left. Here we need to specify the layout. So we want to use this layout, and now this is dashboard layout. That is what we need to use. Now this dashboard layout, I think the reference has been added already. And with this, we want the user to be authenticated before he can access this. Okay, so we can use this attribute. Then we're going to say authorize. So if you are using rows or claims, you can actually specify a row here. But here, before you can access this, you must be authenticated. And as soon as you're authenticated, it means basically you are admin. Okay. So we do not need to include rows in here. But if you want to do it, you can just go ahead and add rows. And even if you're authenticated, you should have a specific row before you can access this. Okay. So now that we are good here, what is the next thing that we need to do is when you check our page, if a user tries to start meeting, we are navigating to a component known as meeting and then pass on this meeting ID. We did that from here. So we're going to first work next on creating this meeting component and now looking at how we can start a meeting with this. So we're going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to handle that too.